Welcome back to the Sapphic podcast. I am your host, Nisa, and returning to the show is Kelsey. Kelsey, what's up?
How's it going? Happy to be here once again. Can't believe you asked me back.
Well, it was touch and go there for a minute, but I did call on you to come to this one because you have a little bit of background in the subject matter. So, reality TV.
Yes, I love it. I'm here for it. I will say I think most of the reality TV that I watch is like the romance stuff. Mm-hmm. So Bachelor, Bachelorette, huge fan.
Any Love Island?
So that's one show that surprisingly I have not watched, but I've heard really good things about it.
I haven't watched it either, so.
But there's they do so many seasons in like different countries and stuff like that, and I've never watched it. I think that's gonna have to be next on my list because I will watch any garbage like that. So
there's so much like romance reality TV. I know there's like, what is it, Married at First Sight or something.
Yep, love that one. Yep, that's a great one. I love that one. Too Hot to Handle. That's a good one.
What is that?
I haven't seen that one. So that's basically they get a bunch of people who are just, really objectively hot and like just put them all together in like this mansion house. And basically the goal is that they can't hook up with each other, but they do all these things that make it really tempting for them to do that. And I think they lose points if like some people do hook up. It's crazy. It's so trashy. Yeah, it's literally, and I'm trying to remember because it's been a long time since I've seen it, but we were engrossed in that one. So trashy. Another one, The Ultimatum.
I was gonna say,
or Move On.
My wife used to watch The Ultimatum, and wasn't it like they went on when their relationship was on the rocks or something? And
yes.
It's like, you either propose or we're gonna break up.
Yes, yeah, like the premise is one person typically, like there's like a bunch of couples that go on. One person is like ready to take the next step, get married, settle down, start a life together. The other person is like really hesitant, so really sets the stage for, great TV.
That's the best way to start a marriage is
right,
if you don't marry
exactly.
me, we're going to fucking break up.
Right. And then what they do though is like, so they the start of the and I think it's just funny that it's like Nick Lachey and his wife Vanessa Lachey that are on all these shows. It's just so funny to watch. So they're like, the hosts or whatever. But then they have the couples swap partners, and then they live together with like the other partner for, I don't know, a couple weeks or something like that. And then they have to decide whether they want to stay with this new partner or go back to their original partner, and if they're gonna, get married, whatever. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I feel kind of like, I don't know. I'm torn because I love it and I'll watch any of that stuff. Kind of wish I was a little more discernible with the stuff that I watched.
Okay, so outside of that, you have challenge shows. Do you watch any challenge shows? We've already found out you don't watch Survivor, which is so crazy.
I've never seen Survivor. So actually there is a show that we've watched because I've actually gotten my wife into reality TV. She was not a reality TV person. She would make fun of me. And then one season of The Bachelor, she was right on board. Special Forces, it's called. So it's not like at all like romance. It's actually, it's pretty good. They take like 15 to 20 celebrities and like put them through actual like military special forces training. It's very entertaining. And JoJo Siwa was on like one of the most recent ones.
I still don't know who that is. You guys have been trying to get me to understand who this person is, and I still don't know who she is.
She's a former, Dance Moms, reality TV. There we go.
If you say so.
You never saw Dance Moms?
No.
Oh, Dance Moms is a classic. It's just a bunch of young dancers, but the real draw is like their moms are insane. And so it's just like the moms fighting over like whose daughter's better. It's honestly, it's horrible.
I was going to say, it sounds like it's exploiting the poor little children.
It definitely is. And I'm seated watching it.
I think the only like reality TV I really watch are like those renovation shows. Does that count as reality TV?
I think so.
The cooking shows. I like Chopped and what's What's the one?
Top Chef.
Yes. And then Cutthroat Kitchen.
Okay. I've never really watched any of those.
I love cooking shows.
Yeah. Oh, well, then you would have liked the book that I just finished reading then.
Really?
Love and Other Disasters.
Okay.
By Anita Kelly. That's like the premise, is it like takes place on a cooking show called like Chef's Special.
Okay. I guess we can jump right in with that then, because I actually also read a cooking show book as well. Love It 350 by Lisa Peers.
Okay. Oh, I get it. Like 350 degrees.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say there's not like a ton of books that have like the, chapter headers, but this one had it, and it was like every time it was another chapter, it would show like the dial of the temperature going up a little bit. So that was kind of
that's kind of fun.
I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Love and Other Disasters, Anita Kelly. How do we feel about it?
Yes.
What was it about? Tell me.
So it's about these two people, Dahlia and London. London is non-binary, which actually this is the first book, like the first Sapphic book I've read that features a non-binary person, which I thought was cool. Basically, Dahlia has just gone through this like divorce, and she's kind of down and out in her life, and she joins this reality show called Chef's Special, which I always love, like the knockoff names that they come up with in these books.
Yeah,
it always makes me laugh. It's just like a reality show. Someone gets kicked off each week. So they develop a connection, and that, further just develops over the course of this show. It was an okay book. It definitely wasn't my favorite, but I think part of that is because I don't watch really a lot of cooking shows. Most of the shows that I watch are like the romance based. Like I'm here for all the drama. So it didn't hook me quite as much because I'm just not into that type of reality show as much.
How was the romance in that? Because I found in a few of these, if it wasn't like a dating show premise, the romance kind of fell a little flat.
Yes. I think that's something I also would agree with. I think it's just hard if you're writing a book that doesn't center around like that romance piece of it. I mean, it was still, it was okay. I thought it had some interesting themes of the characters dealing with family members being accepting of them and things like that. But I felt like they weren't able to dive too much into that or the romance just because the cooking show was also kind of the main point.
Yeah, and I mean, so like I said, I read Love It 350, and it had Tori, who is like a single mom, and her kids are about to go off to college, so she's like an empty nester now too. And then Kendra, who is... Did you watch American Idol?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So she's like the Simon Cowell of cooking shows. Her name is Kendra. And so she's one of the chefs that judge the show. The premise of the show is it's amateur bakers, and every week they have to bake one savory and one sweet dish that like falls into a baking category. So like bread or pies, cakes, etc. The romance really kind of fell flat in that one for me, just because it was one of those where since they were a contestant and a host, obviously there's contracts that say that can't happen. On top of that, because it wasn't one of those shows where they have to like live in a house and stay every week, it was like once a week they would see each other, but they wouldn't really talk outside of the competition. And so I don't know, I think they didn't talk to each other like more than a couple sentences, except for like maybe the last 3 chapters or so. And so I'm like, this is really tough. If you don't love baking shows, it's tough. And even I love baking shows, but I was like, it's really hard to create that drama in writing with a baking show, because usually you see like the ticking clock and people racing around, and it just doesn't, like they say, oh, so and so is racing towards their oven, and you're like, meh, I don't feel it. I don't feel that.
I will say, I think Anita Kelly did a pretty good job. They spent a fair amount of time outside of like the actual being in competition in the show portion.
Okay.
But again, I feel like it's just hard. I thought she did a good job of kind of balancing that. You definitely got the outside of the actual show portion, forming a connection and things like that. But there were times where I was like, but I actually want more of the cooking show. Like I want to know more what dishes they're making, like, what. But yeah, I just feel like it's got to be hard when it's not romance based.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen books that do it well, where it's like still competition shows, but not necessarily cooking, because I talked about it a lot previously on the podcast. I read Body Check by J.J. Arias, but I also read Reality Check by Nicole Pyland, and both of those were competition shows. I think the thing that they had working in their favor is, since they were competition shows, they had to stay together on like the secluded island or whatever in the same house with the rest of the competitors. And so you had all those awkward interactions, and they were, you know, forced proximity. So there was that opportunity between the challenges that they could actually have that tension.
That's a good point. 'Cause in the one that I read, they were staying at the same hotel. So that's where all the romance happened, was just like in the ballroom of the hotel and in their hotel rooms and things like that.
Yeah. You can try and inform me on this, because I don't really watch that many reality TV shows. I think the thing that added so much to like the drama of it for me with those two is that with their rooms, like the doors were taken off, and then there were cameras in the rooms as well. And so it's like you literally cannot find peace unless you are actively in the shower or on like the toilet.
Yes. Yep. I'd say that's definitely, I feel like that's definitely how it normally goes in those shows too, in real life. So
God, I don't know if I could do that 24/7, like being asleep and there's just a camera up there watching you in case.
Yeah. I could not.
I mean, the show premises, I feel like, probably mirrored, I guess it would be Survivor-esque, which you haven't seen Survivor, but like in Body Check, it was like a reunion show where I think it was enemies. So they invited back your enemy from your season. Ooh, and now you were on a team and you had to try and beat the other ones for your chance at the money. Fabiola and Cam were the ones who were there. And so Fabiola lost to Cameron. And so they brought them back as the competitors and they had to be on a team. And there's backstory on why they were enemies in the first season. And so that gets all drug out because of how they get pushed together. And so I thought that was really interesting. Reality Check, kind of similar premise, but it seemed like in that book, instead of like really looking at the competition for drawing out that drama, they really looked at the house. So it seemed like one of those shows where the house was really the focus, and then the competitions were like just superfluous, just a way to kick people off. But you had...
So kind of like a... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, which show?
Big Brother?
Yes.
Okay.
That is very much what it was like. It was like Big Brother, because they had like OGs, so people from the previous seasons, and then they had the newbies, and it was OGs versus newbies, which kind of felt like old school, like MTV, like Road Rules versus the real world. So it was kind of like one of those. Actually, that would probably be also what it could be like, the real world a little bit, but add a competition aspect really, and not just people hating. Some of it though did rely on that. So like the competition would determine who was safe, but it wouldn't determine necessarily who was going home. It still was like a little bit to a vote sometimes. And so really it seems like that show relied on a lot of drama. That book relied on a lot of drama. And I think it was fun too, because Callie was the new person and she was only on it for the money. And so she was like trying to keep her head down and not talk to anybody, not cause drama. But, you know, on a reality TV show, that doesn't really make you popular. Like, they try and find ways to boot you off because they need that. Dayton, who was one of the OGs, I feel like they brought her back just because she is like a fuckboy. They invited her back, and then they invited somebody back that she had hooked up with on one of the previous seasons.
Of course.
And then because she is like openly a lesbian, they had a couple other lesbians that got brought on the show, and I feel like it was just like they were hoping there was going to be a cat fight for Dayton. So that, I don't know. I don't watch reality TV, but when I like read stuff like that, it's so trashy, but I kind of love it.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel about watching it. It's like, yeah, this is so bad. I'm not gonna learn anything or gain anything beneficial to my life by watching this right now, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's entertaining.
I guess I can see the appeal. I think the thing that deters me a lot of times is the dudes. I just don't want to see the dudes.
Yeah. That's fair.
I feel like where a lot of that drama comes in, though, is when you have people fighting it out over, like, a love interest.
And that's why, I mean, I will stand by The Bachelor and Bachelorette. I love it. I will say I much prefer watching The Bachelor because there's a lot of women and the one dude.
Yeah.
Whereas The Bachelorette, it's all dudes and one woman. So I'm like, you know, it's a little tougher for me to watch, but
I hate to say this. I feel like The Bachelor would be better TV because women are catty, or at least the women they find for these shows are so catty.
Yes.
And like,
yes, that is the other aspect of it.
The dudes that they find just don't hold that drama potential.
No. And they always try to, like, the good old producers will always try to find, like, you know, what little drama they can. But it's a lot more entertaining, in my opinion, to watch it when it's all the women who are, like, just going back and forth, all fighting over this one guy. And yeah, it's awesome.
Okay.
I'm here for it.
So you are my reality TV expert. Are there any shows where it is actually, like, sapphic people or gay guys or anything, like non-straight people trying to date other non-straight people?
I don't think so. I feel like there was one show I watched where they specifically had one season of it where it was all, like, queer people. So it could have been, like, anybody dating anybody. I don't remember what that one was, but I would love, I wish they would do, like, a lesbian bachelorette or something like that. Like, you know, I feel like there's instances I've seen in, like, the news where it's like there's one instance where two of the women who were on a season ended up falling in love, you know, afterwards or whatever. Or there's been, I mean, actually on both sides, Bachelorette and Bachelor, contestants who then after they're on the show come out as, you know, queer, which I think is awesome. But I've always said I wish there would be a lesbian Bachelorette.
The big hubbub some years ago is that, like, two of the contestants from The Bachelor who got decently far ended up dating after the show.
I think that's true. I remember seeing that. I don't remember. That must have been a season that I didn't watch.
How dare you?
Because I don't remember. I know. I'm like, I'm missing out on the best one.
So no representation for the queer vote.
No.
I did find, because it wasn't very common, but I did find one book that could help, like, with that queer reality TV show itch, I guess. It was The Dating Show by Violet Morley.
Okay.
So obviously it's still a reality TV book, but you have Avery and Stella. So Stella is a struggling actress trying to, like, make her big break, and Avery, I think she's just, like, a part-time, she's got, like, 3 or 4 different jobs trying to make it. And so her friend signs her up for a dating show where I think it's called Love or Money, and you have to choose, like, once you get through all the dating portion, the contestant who's, like, the bachelorette decides, hey, I want to date you, and then it's up to the contestant to decide whether they want the money or love.
Ooh.
Yeah, but it's an all Sapphic cast for that one. And Stella and Avery meet and have a one-night stand. That's not really a spoiler, that's in the summary. And so Avery and her don't exchange numbers. They both kind of have, like, that mutual pining going on, but they're like, oh, well, it's too late now, missed opportunity. And so Avery shows up at this dating show, and the bachelorette or the love interest or whoever they're supposed to be competing for shows up, walks down the stairs, and then she catches, out of the corner of her eye, the host starts walking down the stairs, and of course it's Stella. And so it's like that oh fuck moment of, I've been looking for this woman, and there she is, and I am not allowed to talk to her, say anything, or do anything.
Classic.
So you have the drama of all the contestants there trying to fight it out for the Bachelorette and their screen time and their dates, but then you also have the drama of Stella and Avery wanting to hook up but not being able to talk to each other or do anything about it.
It's Avery, the one who's the contestant in that one?
Yes.
So is she basically like faking affection for the bachelorette type person in that?
That actually is the interesting thing. So,
okay,
she does start to have feelings for the bachelorette in that, but it's one of those where when they go on dates and stuff, obviously, like, she's having some feelings, but then out of the corner of her eye in the periphery, since Stella is the host, she is at all of their dates. And so she's getting, like, guilt gut as well, because she's like, well, shit. I think pretty early on, she even says that if it weren't for the fact that Stella had shown up, she probably could have seen herself falling for the bachelorette. And so it's a lot of complicated feelings because she doesn't want to hurt, I believe her name is Quinn, the bachelorette. So she doesn't want to hurt Quinn, but she doesn't want to hurt Stella, but also she really needs this money. And so she's kind of got like 3 choices there.
That's tough.
Yeah. And then, of course, Stella knows that I think she's been in LA for like 7 years or something, and this is like her big opportunity because I guess it's probably the equivalent of like Logo. There's like the LGBT something something channel, and so they have a whole host of new shows coming out that are geared towards queer people. And so Stella's like, if I can do really well on this, they're looking for a whole bunch of people to be on all these shows, and this is like my chance for the big break. And so she knows if she breaks anything with her contract and tries to date Avery, that it puts that at risk. And she's been here for 7 years, and she's like, this is it, probably.
Yeah. And what's that one called again?
That is The Dating Show by Violet Morley. I mean,
okay, I might need to check that one out.
It's one of those where it's still like reality TV, so the prose isn't gonna blow your mind.
Right.
But if you're looking for like just the specifically Sapphic dating show drama, like that's gonna do it for you. I got really excited during that one.
Perfect.
Because so many of the characters are so catty, and they're just like so dramatic, and some of them are just overacting because they're influencers and they're trying to build their following, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah. That sounds about right. You also read Here for the Wrong Reasons and Hot Summer, right?
Read Hot Summer. It's been on my TBR, but I have read Here for the Wrong Reasons. You read Hot Summer, right?
Yes. Yeah, I read both of those. And they were actually, those are the first 2, I guess, like Sapphic romance books I read. So they'll always have a special place in my heart. I enjoyed both of those books a lot.
I know with Here for the Wrong Reasons, Lauren was specifically there with the ulterior motive of building her following. And she literally did not give like 2 shits about the bachelor. What was his name? I don't even remember. Josh, that's right. Yep. Yeah, so she didn't care anything about Josh. She just wanted to get close enough so that she got enough screen time and then get kicked off. But I'm trying to remember what Hot Summer was about. Like, how did that one play out?
So that one is specifically like a play on Love Island, which I know I said I haven't seen, but it's kind of a similar, throw a bunch of hot people into the same area, have them stay in the same living quarters, which I think Love Island is the same way. I could be wrong because I haven't seen it, but I'm guessing it's the same way, where everybody sleeps in the same room as well. Ooh. So like there's like 10 double beds or something like that. And like all the couples just sleep. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, is that how it works on Love Island too?
It might be. I feel like one of the shows I've seen definitely was like that, where it was like multiple people sleeping in the same rooms. So Hot Summer is basically, they bring all these people. I think they kind of have to like couple up, and I'm trying to remember how the show actually works. I think the way it works is like if you're left without, like if you're not in a couple by the time that the elimination round comes about, then you're kicked off. So like you have to like kind of form alliances, and even if you're not in love with this person who you're in a couple with, like they'll form friendship couples and stuff like that just so they can stay on the show.
They were roommates.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, it's funny. And
are same-sex couples okay on that show?
Yes. So this is one thing I did actually like about it was very inclusive about all that. It definitely started out very much like the guy, I think like the way it opened was like each guy that came in got to pick the girl that they wanted to couple up with or whatever. But then by the end, there were some same-sex couples in there. And it was very much like not an issue of like, that's weird that, those two girls are together or anything like that, which I kind of thought was refreshing. It was definitely set up to be a framework where like they're supposed to be kind of coupled up men and women, but it didn't end up really being that way. And we learn very early on that the two main characters, Cass and Ada, are both bisexual. So that like kind of, sets the stage for, their budding romance. And then it's a lot of will they, won't they. Cass she's not attracted to any of the guys on the show and feels this attraction to Ada. And I'm trying, because it was so long ago that I read it. But yeah, so there's just lots of very toxic men, as always on those shows. So... But it was good.
You bring up toxic men, and I feel like that was what my problem was with, like, just so many of these shows is the toxic men in them.
Yeah.
Like, call me crazy, but I don't want men in my programming. Or my
very
books.
Fair. Very fair. And Hot Summer particularly had this one guy who, like, it's like all the show, like, the producers will pick someone to like paint as the show's villain or the season's villain. He was very much like, like everyone hated him. I hated him reading it. I'm like, get this guy out of here. Like, I can't. And he was standing in the way of Cass and Ada. And I was like, no, I can't have this. And I'm trying to remember so I also think it's really funny. I don't know if all the books you read were this way too, but like it always ends with like the reunion episode. And it kills me. I'm like, okay, here comes the reunion. Now the people are going to get back together and it's all going to...
I feel like the reunion is like the perfect opportunity because I feel like all of those shows basically have a reunion,
Yeah. And they always try to throw in some kind of big reveal in it to, Yeah,
and so I feel like even with a lot of the books, even if you had the third act breakup, like you knew the reunion show was gonna come up and you're like, oh, okay, well, everything will be resolved after the break.
Yes. Exactly. I started thinking about it. I'm like, it is so funny because it is so perfect and it'll work every time because 100 do have that.
Exactly. It's like,
but it kills me.
Even if they part and they don't get each other's numbers, you're like, there's going to be the reunion show.
Yes.
They're going to see each other at least one more time.
Yes. Yeah. There's always a sentence that's like, oh, and so got an invite to the reunion. And you're like, all right.
Yeah, there it is.
Here we go.
Yeah. It's so funny, too, because I feel like in those books, you'll see where it's like they're both pining over each other and like, how do I get in contact with them? And you're like, you guys contractually signed paperwork that says you're going to be on one more episode. Stop acting angsty. Yes. You know you will see them again.
That's true. And I also just always, I'm like, but you also know their name.
Yeah.
And it's in this day and age, it's not hard to like find someone on social media if you really want to. You know what I mean?
The only one I saw that had a plausible reason for why that wasn't possible was Body Check by J.J. Arias. Again, throwing her name out there. Because obviously, since it was their second show together, they had their falling out in the first season they were together. And so Fabiola had blocked Cameron on all socials because she didn't want to hear a goddamn word from her after that first season.
Okay.
And so it was one of those where I was like, just unblock her.
Right. Right.
But still, I mean, that would be the only way I could say, okay, Cam can't talk to Fab because she's blocked, but you're like, there's absolutely no reason why Fabiola can't unblock her.
Right. 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 Well, that always gets me too because like the cooking one I read, Love and Other Disasters, it was like one of the big reasons why they don't want to commit to each other and stuff is because they're like, oh, we're never going to see each other again after this. Like one of us is going home. And I'm like, okay, but in this day and age, it's actually pretty easy to stay in contact. If you really want to be together, you'll make it work. You know what I mean? Like, so that whole plot doesn't really work for me in these because it's like, okay, it's actually pretty easy to stay in contact with people if you really want to.
Actually, I'm trying to remember of the ones I've talked about. At 350, they only lived like 2-hour drive away from each other.
Oh,
Body check,
okay.
they both lived in, I think, LA.
Okay.
Reality check, they both lived in LA. The dating show, they both lived in LA. I think the only one where they lived far apart was Here for the Wrong Reasons.
Okay. Yeah. I think, most of the ones I've read, well, between all three of them, Hot Summer, Here for the Wrong Reasons, and then Love and Other Disasters, they all lived like pretty far away, okay. I think. Although actually, Hot Summer, maybe not as much. It took place in the UK. And I think they lived like a relatively close distance, like within a couple hours or something. But yeah, Love and Other Disasters, one lived in Nashville and the other one lived in Maryland or something like that. So,
that's not terrible.
A little bit. Right. Well, and my whole thing is I'm like, well, if you really want to make it work, I feel like that's, I don't know, like just do long distance.
Well, and even so is like, what are your jobs that you can't just like,
right.
Some of them I understand where it's like, oh yeah, I'm at a firm for a law firm that I'm trying to make partner track. And then you're like, okay, but what does the other one do? And it's like, well, I'm a waitress. And you're like, okay, you can't go and be a waitress elsewhere.
Right. Well, and your job is your job's flexible enough to allow you to miss work for however many months to do this filming. But that's just me getting really into like the details and being like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I need this to make sense.
I think the one that I actually like the most that dealt with that is The Dating Show, because it actually was a huge plot point that Avery quit all of her jobs to be on this show. And so she's like, when I go home, if I don't have this money, I literally have no job. I have bills to pay and I'm going to be in a bad way.
Yeah, that adds to the dire need for her to
win. The rest of them, it was like so many of them were influencers or they own their own business. And you're like, okay, sure, because that's what all these contestants do on all these TV shows.
Right. Yeah, especially now. I feel like it's like all of them are like, it's
or if they're not influencers, like right afterwards they'll start like a podcast rewatch or try and be an influencer and partner up if they have like a lot of followers after the show.
I feel like it's rare that you get people where like you'll more and more, especially on The Bachelor and Bachelorette, it's like it'll say their name and then it'll be influencer, whereas I feel like it used to be like lawyer or something like that and you're like, all right, not that there's anything wrong with influencers, but it's just everyone is one nowadays.
And like there were shows back in the day, like early infancy of reality TV, where it was like notary, and you're like, okay, so how are they? And they even had like interviews where they're like, yeah, my boss really wasn't okay with this, or like I had to explain to my family, and they don't really understand, and you're like, yeah. And like to your point is now it's all influencers and they're like, man, it's really hard not to be posting from my socials. And you're like,
like the stakes seem a little bit lower.
A little bit. Yeah. Just a little.
I wonder. So for Hot Summer, Cass is like the main character in it. So I think if I'm remembering right, she works for like a dating app site type thing that like tries to get people together, through like live events and things like that. So that's why she goes on the show in the first place, is because she's trying to build like the company's brand and get more visibility for her company. And so she's like super reluctant to even do it in the first place. She's like, this is so stupid. Like, I don't want to do this. And then she ends up meeting Ada and they develop this connection and romance, and the rest is history. But she doesn't tell Ada that that's why she's on the show. And so then when it does eventually, this might be spoilery, but when it does eventually come out that that's why she's there. And to me, that didn't really like, I don't know. It didn't fly for me as being like a super valid reason for Ada to be so mad. That one didn't work for me as well in terms of like, I don't know. It seemed like a very logical explanation that Cass was just like, look, I wasn't planning on initially like coming on this show and finding love and doing all this stuff, but it was for my work, and now I have like, yeah.
I feel like, though, especially with how reality TV shows are these days and how big social media is, it should almost be a given that there's going to be an ulterior motive that they're on this show.
Right.
I don't feel like anybody truly goes on a dating show thinking, this is where I'm going to meet the love of my life. Come on. Like, really?
Yeah, that's where I feel like that one kind of fell like a little flat, just in terms of it seemed to create drama where it wasn't as believable of like a big betrayal that I think the author was trying to get across. But
depending on when they set the story, I could see that being an issue. Because like I was saying, is early in reality TV, it did seem like people were going on to these dating shows to actually maybe not necessarily find love, but at least find a potential partner. And so you're like, okay, I could understand it in like that kind of case, but truly, I don't think it's been that way on reality TV shows for at least 10 years. At least.
Right. And I feel like it is interesting too. I feel like a lot of at least for The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, again, I keep going back to that because that's what I know best. But I feel like the earlier seasons, some of the couples actually they're still together to this day. Whereas I feel like nowadays it's, they break up 5 months after they supposedly get engaged and things like that.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Which again,
I remember a few of like the early shows, like there were a few where that was the thing, is like they followed the couple for a year afterwards and they were still together. They eventually did break up, but it was like huge news when they broke up because they had actually been dating for quite some time after the show.
I can think of 3 or 4 couples out of the 25 seasons of Bachelor and Bachelorette that are still together and like they have families now. And I think one of them was like the very first season, which was Tristan and something. I don't know.
Early shows, I could see where that would be something you'd be really upset about, where it was like, this was just for clout. Nowadays, I'm just like, I assume everybody on this show is on it for clout, or they're looking to move to LA and like use it as a jumping off point. Because if I'm not mistaken, a lot of these shows, if you're a really popular contestant, like they ask you back to be a guest host, or all of a sudden there's a new reality show and then you get to be the host of that. Like,
yes. Or the way that it works for the Bachelor and the Bachelorette is like most popular like the most popular contestant from the previous season who didn't win gets to be the new Bachelor or Bachelorette. So like that's like kind of, like the big thing on that show is guessing, which person's going to be the new Bachelorette. It's always someone from like the previous season who got really far that people loved, but their heart was broken by The Bachelor or whatever. I feel like if anyone says that they're not in it at all for like a following or improving their social media brand, I feel like that they're just lying. You can't be in this day and age and that not be, even if it's a tiny little factor, I'm sure it's got to cross your brain at some point, right?
100%. I feel like a lot of those shows pay the contestants to be there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're also getting like a stipend and they're paying for like your living situation and your food and everything for like however long you're on the show. Yeah. And traveling too.
Beautiful.
Exactly. Like
there's these once in a lifetime experiences.
There is absolutely no reason not to go on this show.
Right.
Did you read any like outside of like those completely drama filled ones? Because like I like home renovations and business renos and stuff, and I had read one too where it was almost like the reality TV portion was secondary to the story. It was Don't Cry for Me by Rachel Lacey, and it was like a business renovation show. And so like Josie owns a bar and it's basically on the brink of closing, and so she writes into this show, and the host Eve doesn't want to do a renovation on a bar for personal reasons that come out later, as they always do. But it's like their 3rd season and they need one last business because one of the businesses dropped out. So she's like, fine, I'll do it. And so it's like them falling for each other as this renovation is going on.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I have not read that one. But the one that comes to mind, Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail, which was actually, I think someone mentioned that one in the book club as being a reality one. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that is technically a reality one. Have you read that one?
Okay, this is gonna sound awful, but no. I'm not a huge fan of AHB.
Yeah. Fair.
I'll say, Delilah Green Doesn't Care was one of the first Sapphic books I read, and so it holds a special place in my heart. But it also, you know, my love of single mom trope. It also did have a single mom. It wasn't one of those where I was like, okay, well now I want to go and read the rest of the series.
Yeah, I feel like, that was definitely, Delilah Green was also one of the first ones I read. And then, but I devoured it. I was like, all right, give me more, like just fluff, like easy stuff to read. But yeah, so the second book is Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. And Astrid is the stepsister of Delilah from the first book, and I think she's really into like interior design and kind of that whole thing, and she meets Jordan, who is very much like into, you know, I can't even think of what the right word is,
home maintenance,
like kind of like a builder design, like exterior design, like more into like the architecture side of it. They meet because Jordan runs into Astrid on her first day and spills coffee all over her white dress, which literally is like the anger about this like accident was like, no, come on, this is not, we can get over this, we're adults. Okay?
No, you can't.
But it sets the stage for like their like enemies to lovers.
That is the weakest enemies to lovers plot I've ever fucking heard. You spilled coffee on me and now I hate you.
Yes, that is literally like, and it goes on and on and on. I'm just like, okay, come on. Like, we can go change, put on a different outfit. Like, it's okay. But yeah, so that's kind of how it starts. And then Jordan's the one kind of, she's been employed along with her brother to help kind of do like this home renovation, fixing up like, you know, the structure, the foundation of the house, things like that. And then Astrid is in there to help with like the designs and everything like that. So that's one, where like it's kind of like, I guess technically, you know, it takes place in a reality show type, because they're filming as they go along and do this. But it's kind of secondary to, you know, the romance that develops between the two.
I feel like that could almost be its own subgenre, where it's like romance first and like the reality TV show secondarily.
Yeah, that is true, because I feel like books fall into kind of like, books in that genre fall into one or the other. It's either like the romance is, you know, the main part, and it's just they happen to meet on this reality show and that's how that kind of develops, or it's like the whole point of it is the show and then the romance secondary.
I guess for me, especially with like Don't Cry for me, I think if I had gone into it thinking of it as romance first, reality show second, I would have liked it a lot more, or at least had different expectations going in, because when I go into like a reality TV show book, I'm looking for like that high drama.
Yeah, same with Love and Other Disasters. I feel like I didn't really know what to expect with that one. There's definitely a lot of romance, but I definitely felt like the reality show of it was secondary to the romance part of it. Still interesting. Yeah. Still, you know, glad I read it, but it didn't captivate me as much as Here for the Wrong Reasons and Hot Summer did. But that's also just because that's the kind of trashy TV I watch the most of. So
I feel like you have to have that strong balance of the romance and the reality TV aspect of it. And it is a hard one to do, because if you go to reality TV, kind of like Love at 350 did, then it's like, okay, well now I just don't feel like there's any chemistry between the love interests. Right. But if you go like too heavy on the romance, you're like, oh, I even forgot that was a reality TV book. Because I didn't even remember Don't Cry for Me was a reality TV show one until somebody mentioned it in our book club. And I was like, oh, yeah, it was a business renovation show, huh?
Yeah. Well, that's how I felt about the Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. So I was like, oh, yeah, I guess technically like the premise of that one is that they're renovating this old building for, you know, someone's grandma, and it's a big pillar of the community that they're, you know, but and that does kind of drive a lot of like the plot issues, because it's a big deal when Jordan helps Astrid come up with the designs, but Astrid claims them as being all her own. That leads to the tension between them, because the way that the audience reacts to learning that is, you know, a key point of the story.
I wonder if there would be a way to have like one of those renovation shows where you could strike that balance, because I guess if you think about a renovation show, there isn't typically as much drama as your standard like dating show. I don't know, that would be hard. I feel like some of that too is like when I watch those reno shows, part of the fun of it is seeing it transform, and you don't have that visual aspect in a book.
Right.
So I feel like it's maybe a little bit harder to translate into writing too, though.
What immediately comes to mind for me is Love It or List It. Have you seen that one? Right? And I'm like, that could be a scenario where I could see that type of thing, where it's like it pits like the two hosts against each other or whatever, and then whoever the people are that they're working with have to pick one or the other. Yeah, I can see that.
What I'm hearing is you need to write it now, but make it Sapphic.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good idea.
We're not going to tell people about that. That's your idea.
I could see you could have a really good balance of like house stuff and also that tension, you know, enemies to lovers.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
I need
New idea unlocked.
I need you to write this book.
All right. On it.
That really bums me out, though, that there aren't that many Sapphic reality TV shows.
I just feel like it's so prime, too, for something like The Bachelor or Bachelorette. Like, it's right there. I feel like it would be so easy to do.
Yeah, especially because if you think about it, usually since the drama is, like, the people in the house fighting over each other or fighting with each other over the one, like, The Bachelorette, could you imagine if it was just a bunch of, like, Saphics all together and they're fighting for the Bachelorette, but they got to do something with their time when they're not on a date with the Bachelorette.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's why they haven't done it, because they're like, it's already so messy. We can't.
But that
we can't get even messier.
That would make like the best fucking TV. Tell me it wouldn't. I would watch the shit out of that. And I don't even like that kind of, like that brand of reality TV.
Yeah, I would watch it 100%.
Because you know they'd have so much hidden camera footage of two contestants.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, though, that might be the problem. If there was too much of that going on, you know that the Bachelorette is going to try and boot somebody off for that. Or if there's in their contract where they're not supposed to fraternize, you know they would both get booted. Right. And so it might go too fast. Because too many people are getting kicked off for shenanigans in the house.
Well, this is a horrible joke, but as a lesbian, I have to say it. Like, it might be over so soon because everyone's going to pair up within the first 2 days. And then they're going to self-eliminate. And then that's over.
They're like, I actually really felt a connection with Chloe. Yeah. So I'm going to leave the show. And so is Chloe.
So then whoever's the Bachelorette's just like, all right, I guess there's no one else here for me. Like,
Chloe and I need to go and rent the U-Haul right now. So exactly. I don't have time for this show.
Right.
I mean, the only thing you could say, though, and this is where I kind of chuckle about it, is you could have that money element to it as well, where you don't kick them off if they have the shenanigans, and it's almost who plays the game better.
True. Yeah, that would be an added element to keep people in it for longer.
Which I'll say, if that's kind of something you're looking for, the dating show is very, very similar to that, and that's where I got a lot of those ideas, but I still want to see that on real TV. I think that would be high entertainment.
Well, and just given how many different shows there are now, like it does seem a bit ridiculous that we don't have more of that. Like, okay, for the ultimatum, we had one season that was the queer ultimatum, but like, I want a whole series of just that. You know what I mean?
What? That bumps me out. That bugs me now. I'm not going to think about that because that's making me upset about society.
Fair. We don't need to go there today.
Yeah, this is a light and happy episode. We're not visiting that.
Yes. Yeah.
We were able to make all sorts of societal commentaries on the last episode. We don't need to do that here.
Yes.
Reality TV is fun and drama.
Yep. There are too many times though. No, I won't.
No, now you gotta say it.
I feel like there are so many times where I'm watching it and I'm like, the fact that this is where we're at as a society and this is what people are tuning into and watching is very depressing. But I'm here doing it too.
I mean, Yes and no. Like, I feel like you need a little bit of drama in your life.
Yes.
And it's one of those where you can either watch it or you can live it. And I would prefer to watch it and not live it.
That's true. Have that be my source of drama.
Or it's a little bit of escapism, too.
I do think it's interesting. Like, I find myself putting myself in the positions of the people on those shows and be like, oh, I would never say that. Or like, I would never do something that's stupid. And I'm like, no, I probably would. Like, if I was in that situation, yeah, I don't know how I would be in one of those situations.
And so many of those shows, they're like filmed 24/7. And so it's one of those where you might have been really, really good for 23 hours of the day, but then they just have an hour of you being unhinged, and they're going to find it and they're going to put it into the show.
Yeah. It definitely makes me like feel a little bit more empathy for the people who become like the quintessential villains, because it's like, no, I really don't know that they actually, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, so much of that is editing.
Yeah, that's so true. I never really question, like, since it's just reality TV, I'm just naive enough to be like, oh, that's really what happened. I don't think about the fact that, there's all these elements that go into the editing of it. And, they're trying to create these scenarios to get audience viewership up and things like that.
The power of editing. You should see your last episode. I mean, by the time this publishes, you'll have seen it. I made you look so awful in that just through the editing process.
That was my hope. I was like, I want to come on this podcast and look as awful as I possibly can. So I'm really glad you're able to deliver on that.
Yep. Don't worry about that. You'll have seen it by the time this one comes out. Good. Oh my God. Well, so thanks for coming on the show again. And
thanks for having me again.
And talking about some of that trashy reality TV.
Always down to do that. So let me know if you ever want to do it again.
Definitely. So that's our show. If you liked us, you can hit that like or subscribe. We're on all the social medias, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, at the Sapphic Gaze Podcast. And you can find all of the books that we talked about here on our Goodreads at the Sapphic Gaze Podcast. So yeah, have a good day, night, week, month, guys. And talk to you later. Bye. You're just waving on a podcast.
This happened last time too. I was like, I never know. Bye, everyone.